In dispatch centers and on quiet highways and in hospital hallways that nobody uses anymore, there's a kind of silence you can measure with your breath. I used to think the tape told the truth. If it happened, it lived as audio, a voice, a timestamp, a note in a log. But there are calls that show up on scene, not on tape. They generate outcomes, triangles on the asphalt, a fogged mirror, a door chain still swinging, and yet the official record is a flat line. People think the scary part is what you hear. Tonight, I want to talk about what you can't. Story 1. My name is Lisa Moreno. I'm 34, a 911 dispatcher in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, and I still count by shift. You forget your years when you live in headsets and fluorescents. You remember the flavor of coffee from 3 a.m., the hum in the ceiling when the heat kicks in, the way your station chair swallows you if you let it. Winter of 2014, a Tuesday that becomes a Wednesday, 02:17. I was on console B. The other dispatcher, Marty, had left me a sticky note that said, "Line 3 stutters sometimes. Don't sweat it." Line 3 had a way of feeling like it breathed a second before it rang. A tiny intake I only noticed once I was already dreading it. We live by protocols. CAD up, verify address, cross streets, callback number, nature of emergency. My fingers do that on their own, like prayer beads. That night, line 3 inhaled, and then I heard a voice. Not a voice I could place. Pitch-wise, it was small. Young, or just far away. It said an address in a rush, then a softer clause that hit me strangely. The old home. The old home could mean anything, but my thumbs were faster than my doubt. I tagged unknown trouble, marked responders, and waited for the normal next step. Clarify. But the line scraped into static, like someone dragging a coin across a phone diaphragm. And then, nothing. Dead air. Not even the kind that breathes. I glanced at the recorder screen. It was tracking until it wasn't. An 18-second gap, a flat gray that should have been blue. My headset ticked, that tiny plastic click you only hear when the room itself is tense. "Line 3, Marty said from the kitchen, like he felt it through the glass. "Got it," I answered, and my voice sounded steady because it's trained to be. "Sir or ma'am, are you still there?" I asked into the quiet. No response. I rolled the address into the CAD incident and sent it. "PD en route, ETA 6, I told myself more than the cordless dark. "Call back," my supervisor said over my shoulder. I dialed the number the system had populated. "You have reached a number that has been disconnected." A synthetic woman said it like she was bored, and when I tried again, the message was harsher. "This number is not in service." The ANI-ALI data winked like it had somewhere else to be. "We have an address," I said, and added the cross street because the voice had said it, I was sure. Elm at Pritchard. Except the tape would later insist there was no voice to say it, and no tape. The address wasn't a residence anymore. 20 years earlier, it had been a children's home, a place with a long brick face and a little front yard that was always muddy in winter photos. It had been closed for a while, turned into a paperwork shell. I listened to the radio traffic as the cruiser rolled up. "Dispatch, 22 on scene." His voice was breathy, not from running. "Copy," I said. "Advise." A pause long enough to hear the hum of the center's heating vents. "Windows are fogged," he sounded embarrassed to say it. "It's 11 degrees, he added, like he was preemptively defending his observation. "Front vestibule's unlocked." I watched the timer on the recorder skip again. I looked down at my button, a red circle that glowed when we captured the world, and it was dark. I swore I'd checked it. I reached to press it. My supervisor's hand pressed mine down. "Don't," she said. "It's already... just log it." "Dispatch, this is odd." His partner had joined him. "Chains on the inside doors, 3 of them, with ice on the links, except, at about kid height. That part's wet, like someone thawed it. He coughed a short laugh that wasn't a laugh. And chalk. Say again? I was writing as I spoke, scrawling on paper like the CAD might betray me. Side hall, chalk drawings, hopscotch or something, numbers lining a wall, they match. He trailed off. The timestamps. I had the time command open on my screen. 2:17 blinked at me. On the hall video feed, the camera that watched us all night saw me lift a hand to my mouth and keep it there. Later, when we reviewed the footage, you could see me say, "I heard," 2 words I don't remember forming, and you could see my station, neat and squared, and the dead, unhelpful red circle on my console. The report we filed would misinterpret the event as a welfare check. No caller on the line, patrol found nothing. They found something. They found air inside the building that still held breath, skates of condensed moisture on dirty glass, a corridor where the dust had tiny circles in it like someone had run a toy car in repetitive loops. They found a small palm print low on a door where a lock slid back recently enough to squeak. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I sat in my car and let the frost grow a tongue up the windshield while I tried to name the kind of cold I felt in my chest. The kind you get when your body knows you hurt a child and the tape says you didn't. I still work dispatch, and I still check the REC light like it's a talisman. But that night taught me something ugly. Sometimes silence isn't the absence of sound, it's a decision. Since then, trusting it costs me more than admitting I hurt a child the system insists never spoke. Story 2. I'm Daniel Ortiz, 41, New Mexico State Police. I talk to myself on lonely stretches so I don't drift. People imagine I'm scared of drunks going the wrong way or trucks with no brakes on long grades. And yeah, that'll set your heart banging. But the thing that crawls under my vest is the desert when it decides to be louder than anything on the radio. August 2019, I-40, mile 187, just before midnight. The heat doesn't fade out there. It collapses slow, like an animal finally lying down. The call came through the CAD as an open line, the kind of thing where someone pocket dialed or screamed or forgot to speak. We get those, and 90% of the time they're nothing. But my MDT blinked unverified audio, and that's not a phrase you see unless the system itself is shrugging. 187 possible wrong-way driver, vehicle stationary on shoulder, hazard lights observed. The weird part? The original note said 911 open line, and there was no recording attached, just a dashed line where a waveform should be. The radio on my dash hiccuped every 40 seconds with a kind of pop, like a jar sealing. I checked the rack clock, 23:52. The night held on right there, like the minute was thick. I hit the shoulder, dust pluming behind me, even in the dead heat. The desert at night can feel like you're underwater. My headlights pushed out a slice and everything beyond was a wall. Then I saw the reflection, a slow blink in the dark. Hazards. A sedan sat at an angle, nose obediently facing the white line. 3 triangles were placed behind it, perfect spacing, a spacing you only get from habit or training. The car's hood shimmered with heat, the kind you can feel with your palm an inch above the paint, recently shut off, very recently. Dispatch, 27 on 187, I said, stepping out. The heat came at me sideways. Copy, came the voice in my ear, the voice of someone who's worked nights long enough to sound like they're in a dream. Advise. The road answered like it always does, sifting grit and far-off tire noise that's more idea than sound. I rounded the car, driver's door locked, windows up. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw scuffs on the shoulder, boot prints walking in from the lane, not out to it. That nudged something in me. People park, then step out and move away. Here, whoever it was seemed to have come from the road to the car. And then what? Dissolved? On the passenger seat was a flip phone, older, no SIM poking out from the side. When I touched it, the screen woke all at once, blue-white and cataracted with scratches. 911 called, it said. Not 911 calling, not last dialed. 911 called. Timestamp, 23:52. I held the phone up like it could explain itself. The radio gave me another 40-second hiccup. The car's dash clock read 11:52 and did not budge even as my own watch ticked. I tried the handle again. The lock popped like a tiny knuckle. It was never engaged, just sticky. Inside, nothing was in obvious distress. A jacket, a water bottle with sweat still on it. Condensation that should have vanished in this air. On the floorboard, a road map folded to the page where mile 187 sits like a tiny fingernail. I walked the shoulder a dozen paces down and back. The triangles caught my light and flared red and went dull again. On the asphalt, I saw a smear of fine dust that made me think of a hand being dragged lightly along the road's edge. Not a skid, not fluid, just the memory of contact. "Tow?" dispatch asked me too quickly, like they were more eager to be useful than to hear what I had to say. "Stand by," I said, and listened for a sound other than the ones I brought with me. There was something like wind, except the creosote was still and the sweat at my temples didn't move. My body camera recorded air moving in a place where nothing else did. Later, I watched the footage and felt the wrongness all over again. A breath in an environment that refused to exhale. I brought the flip to the car for shade and tried to redial from it. The phone offered me a polite denial. "No service," it said, and when I opened the back, there was no SIM tray at all. Just a sticker with a number inked in a hand that had pressed hard enough to etch the plastic. I wrote it down. When we ran it, it matched nothing. Like an area code for a place that never had phones. 3 nights later, on a return pass, I saw a bloom of amber in my peripheral at the exact spot, like hazard lights slipping out of sync with the rest of the timeline. Maybe it was a reflection, that's what I told myself. I kept my eyes forward because I've learned not to look twice at lights that insist. The desert, when it stares back. The trick is not to blink. I don't worry about drivers as much anymore. I worry about moments that stay at 23:52 even after my watch decides to leave them. Story 3. My name is MrBallen. I'm 28. EMTP, St. Aurelia Hospital in Albany, but the part nobody goes to anymore, the old North Wing. I pretend I'm good luck. I keep little things in my pocket from patients who made it. A rubber duck, a penny someone flipped before they realized flipping doesn't change much. I keep more from the ones who didn't. November 2007, midnight slipping into 0004 while a storm chastised the city's bricks. We were staged 3 blocks out because the ER bays were jammed. A voice came over the radio with a weird certainty. Fall. Elderly. 9th floor. St. Aurelia. A tone followed like it always does, except this one felt pulled from far away. We get calls routed through 911 that have no personality. They sound like forms. This had detail. The door on the right past the elevator's sticks. Use your shoulder. Code 2 until you get a look. The CAD attached a location and a 1,000-yard stare for audio. Just a blank space. "Who paged this?" my partner asked. He had a superstition about the North Wing, which was fair. They'd shuttered it 2 years earlier. I'd been on a training tour then, and I remember the way the hall smelled like a deck of cards. Dry, old ink, something papery. Electrical, too, a hum that put your molars on edge. We rolled anyway. St. Aurelia in rain looks better than it deserves to. Neon bleeds down the brick, turns the puddles into postcards. We slid under the awning and hustled our gear because timing is the only thing that actually feels like medicine at 3 minutes after midnight. The elevators in the North Wing are temperamental. There's a sign, out of service. We hit the button for the fun of it and stepped back. The panel flickered like it had an opinion, and then the door slid open slowly, reluctant but convincing. Inside, the air conditioning was working. I don't know how. It had the dry bite of an old system trying its best with a structure that forgot it. "Ninth," my partner said, and the carriage obeyed. It shivered as we passed floors that should have been empty. When the doors sighed open, the hallway doing a poor impression of being asleep, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not stale, antiseptic, not the kind that lingers for months, the kind that leaves the skin of a room tacky right after someone cleans an accident up. The door on the right past the elevators stuck. It did. You don't think you'll use your shoulder the way a voice told you, but you do. It gave with a thunk and then a squeal like a violin in a kid's hands. Inside, a clinic room, basic, with a window that had been painted shut years ago. On the counter was a roll of gauze so new it still had factory tightness. On the floor, the impression of wheels in a sheet of dust that someone had laid down as if waiting to be written on. Fresh tracks. You could see where they wobbled and corrected. We did a sweep. "Hello?" "EMS!" exclamation mark. My voice sounded wrong. It didn't bounce off the surfaces like sound should. It rolled forward and then got eaten somewhere between the ox cart diagram and the sink. A pager vibrated in a drawer. I swear it. I opened it and a little black brick curled against my palm like it had been asleep and hit me with a message. 1204, room 913. I looked at the wall phone, expecting a gag of wires. The jack had been pulled, the plate screwed back crooked. "Dispatch wants an update," my partner said into his radio. I bought a second. "Still assessing," I said, which wasn't a lie if your patient is absent. Out in the hall, the fluorescent bulbs did their faint, throbbing migraine. The floor number sign had been pulled, leaving a rectangle of cleaner paint and 4 screw holes. Somebody had labeled it with Sharpie once, the ghost of a 9. We followed the tracks to a room at the end. 913 had a wood door and a painted-over window like the others. No one, no bed. On the wall, someone had peeled tape away in a careful rectangle where a chart might have hung. On the metal edge of the counter there was a smear of something that would have been blood if we'd checked it in the day. Under our lamps, it was just a dull maroon thought. We left a card because that's what you do when you're not sure who you helped. We rode the elevator down with the sense that something was riding above us. You know that feeling? When the cable hums and you feel separate weight. I watched the numbers light up and counted backward without meaning to. 9, 8, 7. The doors opened. The benevolent lie of the lobby washed over us, and then someone at dispatch said, "Maria?" The audio is blank. The log had an incident number. The address was right. The time was precise. The sound was an empty bracket. When I got home, I took off my jacket, and a sticker fell out. Light blue, the size they put on a bed rail when they mean to move someone. It said, STAURELIAN-913 with that cheap label maker font, and below it the date, tonight, printed clean. I keep it. Not because I want the memory. Because I don't ever want to forget that sometimes the help comes from a floor where nobody works anymore, and we answer because we can't stand to leave a fall unanswered, even when the only thing that hit the ground was time. Story 4. My name is Evan Dahl. I'm 39, a deputy in Itasca County, Minnesota, and I keep a winter bag in my truck year-round, like a superstition I never admit over the radio. February 2021, 3 in the morning, minus 18 Celsius, and the stars looked like salt thrown with a hard hand. The CAD pinged me, not with a voice but with a triangulation. Multiple silent 911s, same coordinates, dead center of Larch Lake. The notes read, "Open line, no audio." The line under it was stranger. Multiple calls, same minute, prior nights. If you work up here long enough, you know the sound ice makes when it expands. Whale song under your boots, a long cello note you feel more than hear. People call it singing. I used to like that. I don't anymore, I said copy, and felt my tongue stick a little to the cold air as I spoke. I do not tell dispatch about my brother. I do not say his name on the air. He was 15 when the lake kept him. My father taught me never to use the word take unless a human hand was involved. The lake keeps. That's different. My GPS, which usually drifts a hair and then corrects, locked onto a set of digits and refused to budge. The coordinates stared at me like a dare. When I rolled off the county road onto the plowed access, the snow squealed in that way it does when the temperature is so far past cooperative it's turned brittle. The wind wasn't strong, it was a presence. It pressed your clothes where your body wasn't. The ice road had 2 old tracks frozen into it, blonde with blown snow. Someone had driven out here recently. You can always tell by how the sugar snow fills. Half a mile out, a black smudge became geometry, a dark fishing shelter, one of those pop-up cabanas with the reflective strips taped and retaped where the night chews them off. Beside it, a propane heater sat with its legs spread like an animal ready to leap. I killed my engine, and the world's noise withdrew so sharply it felt rude. Dispatch, I have eyes on a shelter at coordinates. No vehicles. I set it low to keep from disturbing the silence, as if that mattered. Copy came back, and the radio carried a small echo I couldn't place, like a throat clearing in another room. The shelter zipper hung a quarter closed, like someone had stepped out for a second and meant to come right back. Inside, it was warmer than it should have been for an unoccupied tent at 18. The propane tank valve was half open, the burner dull red and just cooling. A folding chair lay on its side, one leg hooked through the strap of a tackle box. The hole in the ice had been drilled cleanly, a neat black circle. The steam coming off it in thin veins didn't match the math. The fish finder screen, those little sonar units, was still on, showing a column of nothing and then a blip that came and went like a heartbeat. I took a slow sweep with my light. Inside the window panel, a plastic square meant to fog and crack and forgive you, that plastic had a drag mark, like a mittened hand pulled across it hard from inside to out. On the floor, melted drips had coursed down through tracked-in snow and refrozen into clear bulbs. Recent. When I leaned into the hole, the air had that metallic cold you taste with the top of your mouth. And there it was, the way the ice under the hut groaned, not with the pop of thermal shift, but with a slow descending tone, like it was finishing a sentence you hadn't heard begin. I stepped back outside and played my light over the lake. Boot tracks led away from the door. They went out 10 meters and changed in a way that put my teeth together. They got shallower, then delicate, then they were just gone, not broken through. No splash, no star fracture. They ended at a perfect ring of darker ice, a circle the size of a kitchen table where the surface looked thinner and smooth as an eye. I've been on enough lakes to know what a pressure crack sounds like. This wasn't that. This was quiet, dotted with the tiny peels from further out, the lake singing one of its long notes while the air on my face felt like it wanted to hold its breath with me. I tried to call back the number the CAD had thrown up as the most likely ANI hit, a number it thought belonged to a seasonal place on the north shore of the lake. "You have reached a number that has been disconnected," the machine said after the signal took a long time to find anything. I looked back at my dashboard to mark the time, 0311. I put it on the paperwork later, though time felt stupid out there, like measuring wind by inches. I radioed for a second unit for documentation because that's what you do when you can't decide what you're seeing. While I waited, I followed a hunch and stepped my weight gently around the strange circle at the end of the prints. The ice there was... untouched isn't the right word. Untouched is nothing. This was something that had been smoothed. The kind of smooth you get when a surface warms just enough and then resets. The kind you get on the inside of a freezer door you've hammered frost off for a few minutes and then closed. The second deputy's headlights marched out to me, carving breath into the air. With company, the world felt real again. We photographed it all: the zipper, the half-closed valve, the chair, the fish finder with its single roaming blip, the window with its sleeve-long smear, the prints becoming not prints at a circle that refused to fracture. I put a hand on the heater. It twitched a ghost of heat back into my glove. We cleared the scene because that's the policy when there's no body, no subjects, no clear criminal predicate. The lake keeps its own ledgers. You can drag that hole all day, and sometimes it just gives you weeds to calm you down. We flagged the location in the CAD. I marked it with the clumsy dignity of cones. I listened a moment longer for what my father used to say was the ice talking to the pressure underneath. It had that same low call, the tone a ship makes as it pulls away from a dock. Except there's no ship here. There's only pressure and old water and whatever idea of a boundary the cold decides to respect. 2 weeks later, almost to the minute at 03:11, the CAD lit again. Open line, no audio, same coordinates. The night had different stars and the wind had a mood. The access road was chewed up with the teeth of a warmer day and a colder evening. When I parked at the end of the ice road, I cut my engine and heard it right away. Not the song you explain to tourists, not the brave crack you tell kids is safe because it always is until it isn't. It was a thrumming just below listening, like a call traveling through a medium that prefers not to carry. It did not say my name. I won't pretend it did. But standing there at 03:11, my GPS digits fixed on numbers that felt like coordinates and also like an address, I felt the same thing I felt when I was 15, and my father put a hand on my shoulder so heavy it made the world sit down. People say the ice sings. Now I say sometimes it calls, and I don't think we were the first ones to speak. Story 5. I'm Portia Lee, 33, building maintenance technician in Houston. Before that, I did security in the same complex, so I know every bad elevator shutter and which stairwell smells like old carpet glue, and I've let myself into more apartments than anyone who isn't family should. May 2016, 21:38, the kind of wet heat that sticks to your skin like an apology. Dispatch paged out fire and police. Possible medical subject locked inside, originating from a 911 call that didn't attach to any recording. Unit 304, the CAD said with confidence. No audio, it added like a shrug. By the time I got to the lobby, the intercom panel was lit up by itself, a sliver of green over one of the ancient plastic buttons. 304, in call, the panel said in little pixel blocks. Nobody was at the desk. Our concierge had gone to deal with the pool gate. I put 2 fingers to the metal to feel the hum. It was faint, like a purr under a door, and then it was gone. The log printer that usually spits thin paper whenever someone presses a visitor code sat quiet. We would later scroll it for that minute and find a single timestamp, then blank. Up on 3, the hall lights made everything the color of old teeth. Police at the door, fire behind them with a spreader bar and a bag that rattled with purpose. The peephole on 304 was one of those cracked flashlight ones, the kind that makes everyone outside look like they're underwater. I knocked with the heavy knuckle you learn in security. "Maintenance," I shouted. "We're with responders." Silence on the other side had weight. I slid my key in and felt the deadbolt give. The latch turned. The door moved an inch, and then the chain caught like a throat clearing. "I can pop it," one of the firefighters said, already positioning the tool. He looked at me like I was the person who had to authorize breaking something because somebody's got to sign paperwork later. I nodded, and the steel sighed, and the chain screws pulled out of old wood like teeth you didn't know were loose. If I'd expected the smell of a place where someone had been afraid, I would have expected sweat. What I got was laundry soap, too much of it, a lemon cleaner riding under something wetter, drywall damp. The TV was on channel 3 with no input, alive in a way that made you feel watched by snow. The dryer hummed with the last of its heat like someone had opened it a second before we knocked. In the kitchen sink, a spoon rattled in a shallow puddle with a rhythm that didn't match anything else. The bathroom door stood open. There are things that tell you a room was just used and should not be empty. A towel draped over the edge of the tub, with one wet triangle touching the tile. The grab bar on the wall beating with condensation, even though the mirror had that kind of fog you get when a shower is long finished. The light flickered, not with bad ballast. It did it like it was being asked to by a person you couldn't see. "Hello?" one of the firefighters announced, stepping sideways to give privacy to someone who might be unclothed and embarrassed. No answer. He put the back of his hand close to the mirror like we do for oven doors. Warm, not hot. Recent. The fog on the glass had drawn itself in from the edges in a way that left a clear strip right at my eye height. In that strip were numbers, backwards, because that's how mirrors talk. 2138. Underneath it, in a quick, straight hand that didn't look panicked, the incident number that would show up in our CAD. I hadn't given it to anyone yet. The only device that knows that number at that minute lives either in the dispatch system or in the ear of someone with a radio. And the radios in that apartment were ours. We did a full search, bed under, closet, balcony for anyone who had stepped out to breathe and been overcome by sudden, "I do not want to be in here." The balcony door rails had a smear low to the ground like a palm that slid while someone curled around the corner. The sliding lock was engaged. The peephole from our side showed the hall's jaundiced light as an ovoid. As we moved in front of it, the light bent and my stomach did a small, mean thing. The peephole doesn't record. We're not that fancy. But there are ways light behaves when a person passes in front of it. We all saw it. That soft dark, that human-shaped distortion crossing the hallway at our door. We heard nothing. The chain hardware we'd removed swung once, a lazy arc finally catching up to a motion that had never physically happened. One of the officers called for EMS to continue in slow because we had no patient to hand off. I called the property manager to start the dance of forms. While I waited for the elevator that never comes when you need it, I walked down to the lobby to pull what we could from the intercom panel. The paper roll twitched and gave me a single line. 2138, 304 in call. After that, it was a stack of blank, like a silent apology. No button press from a front door. No apartment picking up. No concierge involvement. The system had decided it was talking to 304 and then decided it had never learned English. Back upstairs, I lingered because sometimes people hide from help for reasons that aren't logical but are human. I opened cabinets looking for medication bottles, letters, anything that would tell me who we were in this moment. On the counter by the sink was a set of keys on a hook labeled in scratchy marker, LE. For a second I thought the tenants shared my last name. Then I realized I'd been the one to label the spare keys months earlier after a lockout. I stood there listening to the apartment breathe. The fridge kicked on and off with a nervous tick. Water tapped in the pipes like someone quieting themselves with their own pulse. The officers had to make a call. We closed the apartment. New screws in the broken chain plate, card left on the table with a number and a time, and the little boxes you check for forced entry, life safety. I wrote my name because I had been the one to nod when the tool met old wood. In the morning, I came back down to the lobby early to catch the concierge. He hadn't seen the panel do anything. He said the night was quiet except for somebody pressing the pool button a bunch of times from inside the pool area, a thing we don't have a button for. I pulled the intercom log again, hoping maybe the paper would tell a different truth in daylight. Same single line, same gap. I went up to 304 with a new chain bracket because if you break something, you fix something. The apartment smelled exactly the same. The dryer's drum was cool, the bathroom mirror had cleared, But when I turned the chain to test it, the tiny stamped numbers on the bracket caught my eye. You don't think hardware has a sense of humor. The part number, 304, that's normal. What wasn't was the timestamp embossed deep where the screw head would cover it, 2138, because the night manager had started engraving install times after a rash of thefts last year. He did it with an old hand tool he liked too much, and the way the numbers sat, slightly crooked, was his signature. Except I hadn't given him the paperwork yet to make that habit official, and the bracket I was holding was in my hand for the first time, straight from the maintenance office bin. I live in a different building now. It's a choice that sounds like a coincidence when I say it out loud. I still do maintenance because if you've built a life on entering rooms people hoped you wouldn't need to enter, there's something wrong with quitting. I leave the chain down in my new place. People ask if it's safer to use it. I say I prefer not to trap a room in the middle of a movement it hasn't finished. When I pass 304 on other third floors in other buildings, I have to stop myself from glancing at the peephole, from seeing if the light bends like it did the night a call came here and left the only proof on the glass we couldn't save. I convince myself it wasn't real until the intercom hums by itself down the hall. And when it does, I'm reminded that I still live in 304, just not that 304. And I keep the chain always resting, always down,